Welcome to Imposter Hour with Liz and Greg. We're here to explore imposter syndrome that haunts creatives, delving into how it affects their lives and work. Join us as we chat with authors and artists about creativity, self-doubt, featuring imposter characters in their stories, and the occasional imposter who pops up in their day-to-day lives.
And today we have the great pleasure of welcoming Larry Smiglewski to the show. Larry is a marriage and family therapist with a Master's of Science from Capella University, a Master's of Education from Mercy College, and a Master's of Fine Arts in Directing from University of Houston. Larry works with individuals, couples, and families at Equity Therapy, a full-service psychotherapy private practice based in New York City. Additionally, he has spent the last decade as a Broadway and touring stage manager and is currently the production stage manager for the Broadway production of Mamma Mia. Previous credits include Kiss Me Kate on Broadway and the national tours of Tina, the Tina Turner Story, Ain't Too Proud, School of Rock, and White Christmas. Larry was one of 1,800 people chosen from over 20,000 candidates for the New York City Teaching Fellows, where he taught in a hard-to-staff school in the Bronx. During this time, he was named Model New Teacher of the Year. Larry spends his time between New York City and Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Larry, welcome to Imposter Hour. This has been a long time coming. You are one of our oldest mutual friends, Liz and I. So this is an extra special one.
I mean, it's truly an honor to be here with you guys.
I just want to say you have gotten a lot of masters since I saw you last.
Yeah, I need to knock it off with the schooling. I mean, I'm the Peter Pan of school. I just refuse to stop. I will not grow up. Yeah. But I love learning. I know that sounds silly to say, but I just really always have
not
loved
at all. You were in the right place. And, we also, it wasn't explicitly mentioned, but you went to Marymount Manhattan College, and that's how we all met. And
that is how we all met.
You were an RA.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. I was a pillar of society. I did like to follow the rules. I did carry my clipboard around and knock on Liz's door. And
I know, and we were smoking pot and trying to gaslight you that we weren't, and I'm sorry.
I know. That's okay. That's okay. It's water under the bridge now.
Yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago, but it's really funny to think about, Marymount and the experiences there. And it's probably a really good place to start as far as imposter syndrome, because I feel like given the kind of central shared goal of performance and dance, there were so many, I think, impostery people running around. Would you agree with that statement?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And it was, it's weird to go to school in one building, and our entire campus was those 7 floors or whatever it was, and so there was such an insular feeling about it, but also that almost put more pressure on you to feel like you needed to be something and to succeed and to figure out what your thing was really fast, because everyone knew you. I mean, we used to sit in that one hallway. Do you remember? There was the little hallway, and that was all of the theater people. And so everyone knew everything about you. People knew when you had a cold and you were walking down the hallway, they're like, oh, he has orange juice, he must be sick. I just remember someone saying to me, oh, are you sick? I see you carrying orange juice. I'm like, why do you know this about me?
Yeah. Well, and also I feel like it was a school that was a collection of the biggest fish in their small ponds. And then we all went there, and then it was all a bunch of big fish in the small pond of Marymount within the larger New York City. And I've spoken to a few people who graduated, some who went on to have really incredible careers, yourself included, who have all said I also felt like an imposter there. I definitely did. I always felt like I got in by mistake, but I'm curious how you felt, Larry, when you were there.
I mean, yeah, so it's interesting because I was thinking about Marymount on my way to having this conversation with you guys, and I was thinking that I went to a regular public high school in New Jersey. We just had a lot of talent in my school, and so I went to school with a Miss America, I went to school with a Miss New Jersey, I went to school with a woman who was in a band with Pink before Pink became Pink, and all of these people that were just bizarrely talented. So I had imposter syndrome before I even knew what that meant. I knew I was not as talented as the kids I went to high school with. My senior year, we did Oklahoma, and they cast a brother and sister as Laurie and Curly. And I was like, I'm so bad that as a senior guy, I didn't get Curly. They cast the senior woman's brother to be her love interest. Like, that's how untalented I am. So I'm walking into Marymount with this sort of like, I want to be in the arts. I think I want to be a director.
Mm.
I'm 18, so like I had like show my portfolio, which had like three Polaroids of like a one act that I directed. Like so you're walking into this space where, um, there's nothing, there's no like bar that you've set for yourself because you don't even know where the bar is. You're just sort of flying blind, and you are trying to navigate it, but you're also in New York City, and so there's this weird pressure to feel like Broadway's like three stops down on the subway. And so like I should know things and I should be ready for things. And, at 18, I was not ready for that.
Mm.
And yet
Yeah.
we're now, a couple decades later, and you're thriving in the theater as we speak. Over
Mhm.
the course of that journey, then was there a time at which, was there maybe a point at which you had some semblance of like, oh, I've arrived, or at least I have, some idea of what I'm doing, or are you just continuing to kind of, piece it together as you go? Like, what kind of headspace are you in with it?
It's like a little bit of both, to be honest, because, I got to a point, I have toured a lot, as you said in the very lovely
Yeah,
introduction. I, right after COVID, once theater came back, I basically did 4.5 years on the road.
yeah,
Um, and that was probably the first time that I knew when I had a job and when I was going to have my next job, and that like I could sort of seamlessly move from thing to thing. But I started that like I was in my 40s.
yeah.
Mm.
Before that, I taught. I was a professor for 7 years, and I taught fifth grade, and I was always doing other things because my version of imposter syndrome was I'm never going to get another job as a stage manager. Like, this is it. This is the last one. And so,
Mm.
when I think about where my career has gone, one of the reasons I don't think I have as brilliant of a New York career as other stage managers do is I was afraid to wait. I was afraid that if I just stayed in the city and waited for something to come, a Broadway show or something like that, that I would eventually bankrupt myself because it wasn't coming. So when I would get other offers at regional theaters or tours and things like that, I jumped on them because I felt like this is the thing. This is the thing. I wound up winding up loving touring,
Mm.
um, but and so like it's lovely to be in New York right now. But as I was finishing my master's, the last one in therapy, the only thing I had never been was a production stage manager on Broadway. I had been an assistant stage manager. And so to be able to check that last box off,
Mm.
like just as I was finishing my degree with Mamma Mia, has been a really wonderful part of the journey. But that imposter syndrome is still in there being like, yeah, but you probably wouldn't get a second one. So like that's where
Mm.
my brain is like, well, you got it, you did it, be happy you did it, you're not doing it again.
Right.
And so it's like an interesting duality in your head. You feel like that walking into the stage door for the first time, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm running a show on Broadway.
Mhm.
And then 2 seconds
Yeah.
later, you're like, but I'm running a show on Broadway. Like, do I even know how to do that? I think the answer is yes.
Right.
Wow. I mean, I'm just thinking about for people who are listening who don't maybe know each of the roles in theater. And maybe I'm stating the obvious, but stage manager is, I think, the hardest and most important. Like, if the stage manager isn't there, everything just falls apart. And I'm sure there are actors who disagree with me on this, and certainly directors and everyone down the line. But I'm just thinking, like, you were a director when we knew you transitioned to stage managing, and in both of those cases it's really about like holding together like
Mhm.
a huge, like a lot of variables, and it's a lot of control. Do you identify with needing to have control in your life and just
I do. Oh my
balance?
gosh, you sound like my therapist. Yes, I do. Um, The reason that I switched my focus from directing to stage management, honestly, was the fact that the director leaves. So, the
Mm.
show opens and the director is done unless it's a long running show and you come back to note it or see a new cast member go in. But I missed the joy of watching the show and watching it grow. And so when I started stage managing and realizing that part of my job was the upkeep of the show. So like, on Mamma Mia, we have unbelievable understudies, but the first time they go on Broadway, my job is to watch the show and to note them and to make sure that they are doing the show that the director has set. And so it was this interesting way to remain creative the way I am as a director. And then to also, like my type A brain that likes to make schedules and documents in Excel, I could do, both of those things. So it wound up being this really great transition for me. Most people go from like stage management to directing, and I'm like the only one that I think is like swimming the other way up shore. But it worked for me. And so, it is hard and it is a lot of upkeep, but you know it's it's sort of beautiful to especially when you have those experiences with a new cast member coming into the show, an understudy going on, like these moments where you really get to feel like I helped create this.
Mhm.
It is kind of
Yeah.
beautiful
Well, there's also
and busy.
and busy, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, there's also sort of this through line with if you kind of look at your, maybe if you look at them as disparate things, I feel like maybe they are connected as well. You taught for a period of time. You work in the theater as a stage manager, as you said, you're sort of shepherding people in to these things, and now with therapy as well. So there's this sort of nurturing through line that runs through that. And I'm curious specifically with sort of theater and therapy. I mean, people might look at these as like these seemingly disparate types of things. I feel like there's a strong corollary between the two. I was wondering if you could maybe talk about how those careers intertwine for you.
Yeah, well, I jokingly say to people I am becoming a therapist because it's the same thing as being a stage manager without having to call all the light cues. Because,
Okay.
as a stage manager, so much of what I do is manage
Right.
personalities and work with people. The higher up you go, the more the stakes are there. And so, like, for instance, with Mamma Mia, we had 25 Broadway debuts. So, like, that was an overwhelming amount of people who were having this experience for the first time, and they are nervous and they need more support, and they just sometimes just need someone to go to the dressing room and be like, "You're awesome, it's gonna be great tonight." And so I feel like a lot of my career as a stage manager has been this sort of nurturing, and also like, how do the crew members talk to the cast, they talk to the musicians. It's like navigating different
Mhm.
personalities and putting all that together. And I had a friend who I actually work with at Equity Therapy. She was going through this journey of transitioning from theater. She was a Broadway dancer for years, into becoming a therapist. And so I watched her journey online, and probably for, I mean, like 3 or 4 years, I was watching her like go through this, like, okay, I'm going to stop dancing. I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to school. I graduated. And again, the imposter syndrome of like, well, I couldn't do that. Like, I just have to be a stage manager for the rest of my life because I don't know that I can do this. And I finally word vomited to her one day, and I was like, I want to do everything you're doing. How do I do this? Help me, help me, help me. I'm on the road, and I don't know. And she was amazing and sort of talked me through all the steps that you would take, and it seemed to fit. And the more that I was doing both, because I did double duty, like I toured while I was in school, and I figured out the relationship between the two, which is just human connection.
Mhm.
That's at the end of the day, that is like the number one thing in theater. It's the number one thing in therapy is, you're there to make those connections, to be curious about people. And there's not much different from creating a character as an actor as there is in creating that sort of that relationship. You're like learning new things about yourself and your clients through this journey that you're on. So it's really beautiful. You have these moments where the like light bulb goes off and it just is so powerful. And I have seen it in both areas. So it is sort of a natural transition for me, it feels like.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in addition to, you mentioned the connection, but also sort of inherent in terms of necessity with both of those things is clear communication. I imagine that's something that you have to
Yes.
have at the forefront of your kind of your practice, so to speak.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's really tricky if you are seeing someone that has is dealing with something that you have dealt with in your life. Like there can be these sort of triggering moments as a therapist.
Right.
My mother had passed away from Alzheimer's, and like a week later, I had a client whose father had just been diagnosed
Mm.
and was going through this, and I'm like,
Right.
you have to sort of like put yourself take yourself out of the equation and put yourself in it, but put yourself in their shoes at the same time. So it's this balance of empathy and sympathy and compassion, and but also like pushing to help find clarity. So there are all of these emotions that are swirling through the process that, from the therapist side, it really makes you more empathetic. And then I take that to the theater with me. And so there's this sort of circular motion that's happening, that's a little wild to be doing both at the same
Mm.
time. And
Mm.
but I feel like I've given so much to my therapy that I got from my theater experience.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, and I'm also wondering, like, the other layer is you taught for a long time and you taught fifth graders.
Mm.
I
Like,
did. I
can we
taught
just
fifth grade in the
full
Bronx.
stop?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fifth grade, in my mind, was the hardest year. I think fifth and sixth grade. But that's like, I want to hear from your point of view. But in my memory, that's like when kids were really like transitioning into like their full personality, like all the full spectrum of emotions. I don't know where your
Hmm.
frontal lobe is in the development, but I think it's getting there. There's
Yes.
puberty, hormones, all the things. Like, who is harder to work with, fifth graders or Broadway actors?
Wow.
Whew. Huh. Um, at times, Broadway actors, but at times, fifth graders. The thing about the fifth grade was I actually picked that grade. So
Mm,
I did New York City Teaching Fellows, which is sort of like Teach for America,
mm,
where you are, if you get hired, then you are in a certain school district, and then you just teach where they need you to. And so I was put in a school called PS 89 in the Bronx, and they asked what grade I was interested in, and I actually was interested in fifth
mm,
because they start off like these little babies that are like yours, and they come back at Christmas and they are like full grown adults
Mm.
having all of these emotions, having
mm,
all of these like feelings and all and hormones, and like they're like wild for the second half of the year. But it was this beautiful transition to see every year that I did it. And
mhm,
I loved watching them grow. I loved watching that sort of experience happen for them.
mm,
um, I remember that we got picked for this program called Farms to City Kids, where I took my kids one year to live on a farm for five
Oh,
days,
wow.
and they had to do all the chores. They like milk the cows and sap the trees and like all that stuff. And like so many of them had like never seen like a field or like animals like outside. You know what I mean? Like they
mm,
lived in the Bronx. That was like all they knew. And so, but then they like cried because they like missed their parents. And so it was this like, like this like amazing sort of thing to be in their lives. And the fact that they're like now in their 30s makes me want to like lose my mind. Yeah, but like I still am in touch with some of them who
you
are like
do?
doing these like great, yeah, they're like doing these great things in their lives, and you just sort of think like, wow, like, if I had a little part in that person's life, that's amazing. But I also picked fifth grade because that was a really traumatic year for me. When I was a kid, I don't really know why. We didn't really have therapy in the suburbs of New Jersey in 1986, but there was a lot of bullying going on before bullying was a thing. And I missed like 40 days of school that year because I would be like physically ill
Mm,
uh, to go to school. And it was, like now I know that that it's trauma and it's anxiety and it's stress manifesting in your body, which also became a really interesting point to me as a therapist, I'm always looking at people's pasts
Mm.
because there's something in there that like makes you have the feelings you have in your 40s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so it all sort of blends together for me.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
interesting. There's also, I think that there's that corollary also between obviously with mental health and therapy. You're looking for that kind of catharsis and processing and that kind of thing. And I think the arts also is a wonderful avenue for that. So I think there's
Mhm.
that kind of dovetail. And then to that point, if you kind of look at the way I think that we maybe overall societally um, look at both of those things, it's, I mean, we're at a time right now where like NEA funding is going out the window, and we're all like living within these sort of traumas, and almost like if you look at the way that kind of social media is, like it's almost like we're being like looped into these like trauma vacuums, and then we kind of don't have these outlets that I always think of as these really necessary and very important outlets. So as someone who works
Mhm.
sort of in both of those spaces, how do you kind of I guess how do you address the challenges of not maybe being under resourced or underappreciated or undervalued in that way?
Yeah. Well, I want to say one thing about what you just said because, and then I will answer your question, I promise. But, the first Mamma Mia, like when it first opened on Broadway, was like 2 weeks after 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And it was this, time where people were like, do we go back to the theater? Are we trying to do an ABBA musical, like, while the world is in crisis?
Right.
And it turned out the answer was yes. Like everyone, they needed that, and so with what I have seen in the 2 years that I've been with this version of Mamma Mia, it's the same thing. Like people, even when funding is being reduced, even when people are being, mistreated, and the world feels like it's in chaos, there is something beautiful about 2 hours of just forgetting that, of
Mhm.
being able to let your mind just be washed over by something silly, something, fun
Mhm.
and light, that I think is a beautiful, I think it's a beautiful thing. And you have to be conscious of all of the needs that are out there. So in terms of like, is there funding? Can I, as a therapist, like what can I charge? How can I do pro bono work or work where for to help people that don't have the resources or insurance or the financial means to be able to go to therapy, but still need support. And I think that that's part of our responsibility, as caretakers. I think of myself as a caretaker in the theater. I think of myself as a caretaker to humanity as a therapist. Like, I think it's very important that we are acknowledging that, but also trying to find that light, trying to find those moments, of joy. It might just be 2 hours at Mamma Mia, or it might just be being able to come into a therapy session and just let it all out for an hour, like
Mm.
whatever is going to feed your soul. I think that has to be the fundamental goal, and we have to fight against the stuff that fights against that. So we have to fight against funding being lost. We have to fight against people's rights being taken away. We have to fight against, um, the voiceless people who are just struggling to be heard. I think there's a lot that needs to, you could be an activist 24 hours a day, but then you would be burnt out. So you have to find that balance, and you have to recharge your battery also, or you're not going to be viable for other people.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
How is recharging your battery connected to music and musicals? Because I know this, you love musicals and you have for a really long time. I'm wondering if they've served as like a place of comfort and recharge for you, even back in fifth grade when things were tough.
Yeah, I have always loved music. It has always been a huge part of my life. And when I found musical theater, it just all sort of made sense. I actually also have bizarrely in my late 40s fallen in love also more with with plays and also with books. Like the things that sort of recharge me now are quieter than they used to be. I don't know if it's because the world is louder, but there's nothing that brings me more joy than like hiding in my room for an hour and reading, or even like listening to an audiobook, or going to a play and being challenged and laughing, um, and then being able to do a musical 8 times a week that feels like you're doing a rock concert. You know, you're sort of submerged in this beautiful art. It's one of the things that's amazing about New York. It's always been amazing. So, you know, like you can see something different and weird and amazing and brilliant every day of the week
Yeah.
here. And so I think that the more that you let that art and that culture into your life, the easier it is to recharge and then also find your creativity. Like I don't think I'm as creative a person when I'm burnt out as I do after I've had the chance to see something inspiring, or be inspired by someone's work. They're, you know, seeing someone else be creative is very attractive to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Same.
You mentioned a few minutes ago about going to a school that had, you know, a lot of sort of talent and creativity. Did you yourself grow up in sort of your, you know, your household or family dynamic? Was that one where the arts were, you know, kind of played a major role, or is that something that you really kind of found on your own?
I'm sort of the lone wolf there. My uncle had danced. He was a ballet dancer when he was younger. I can remember being a kid and going to see him in the Nutcracker. But that's like the only memory I have. But I am sort of the only artist. We were very sort of quiet, have dinner and watch TV, family. And I was very shy. I was very, very, very shy as a kid. And I remember telling my parents I was going to go out for the spring musical in high school. And they told me later, they were like, he's doing what?
Right.
Like this kid is going to go on stage. But I loved it. I just, you know, I loved it from, you know, we did like little things in like fourth and fifth grade. And I absolutely just, it was something that was so passionate to me. And that I was imposter syndrome. I like ran away from it for like 5 or 6 years because I didn't think I was good. I didn't know what I was doing. You know, it was scary to be in front of people. And so, you know, it took a lot to get me back into it. But then, you know, by then the dam broke and I was hooked.
Yeah.
You got the bug.
Yep.
I got the bug.
Yep.
Well, I'm wondering, and here's where you'll probably send me a therapy bill later, but you know, if I'm a patient walking into your office, Larry, and I'm telling you that I'm feeling imposter syndrome in any number of areas in my life, you know, what can you tell me to like help combat that feeling? And is it, you know, pathological? Is it societal? Like, what are your opinions on it?
I think it is a mixture of things. And I think it comes from different areas of life for different people. So part of the exploration process is, where did that start?
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually say it like that to a client, but what I'll do is, for instance, if you are having imposter syndrome with, let's say, relationships, what I want to do is I want to go back and find where that little, you know, crack in your foundation started. Where was that moment where relationships became tough? Was it, you know, did your parents divorce when you were young? Did you, you know, have a really bad breakup 15 years ago that you're not past? You know, it could be anything. I try to heal and learn from those experiences and then bring that into where we are today. And at that point, then we can name it, because, you know, we are a little obsessed with labels in our society. Everyone has ADHD. Everyone is obsessive compulsive, you know, and to a degree, that is true. I mean, we all have triggers and we all have these sort of character traits. But with something like imposter syndrome, I think it's important to uh, find it before you're worried about naming it. You know, what is the key? What is that nugget of that moment where that began and it just started to pull apart, pull apart, pull apart?
Mm.
Then you get to the point where, you know, if you don't if you don't think you're a strong enough performer, why you are choking at auditions. Where does that come from? Like and if you feel like I'm a writer, but I'm never going to get published, like my stuff isn't good. I read this person's stuff and theirs is so much better. Where did that feeling come from? That could be your third grade teacher telling you did a terrible job on a essay that you worked really hard on. There are those moments and they sort of thread through. I'm always looking for that thread, where it started and where it weaved through your whole life and how it got where it is right now. So that's the first step. And then after that, once you have an understanding of where the imposter syndrome came from and what it feels like for you, then it's named and then we work forward on it. Okay, I had this problem today and this is how I addressed it. I really want my relationship to be stronger, so I'm going to take these 3 steps to feel confident in that I deserve this relationship, that we deserve this, whatever it is, whatever your version of the imposter syndrome is. So it's sort of like go to the past, start to heal, weave it forward, and then look to the future. How can I not have this happen? Or how can I know it's going to happen and be prepared for it? Because there are some anxieties and stressors that no matter what we do, we can't get past them. They're going to be there.
Yeah.
If we know it, then we're like, hello, anxiety on my shoulder. I know you're there, but I'm not going to let you take charge. I'm just going to let you be there, be quiet, keep you calm, and do my thing. So that's really the journey that I take with people that are struggling with imposter syndrome, which is so many people. I work a ton with artists and performers, and it's just when your career is based on how you look, how you sound, what your age is, how many wrinkles are on your face, like how high you can kick your leg, when those are the things that you're being judged on a daily basis, it's really hard to not feel less than at so many points of your life.
Right. I just think about the whole process of auditioning and being in a hallway with 50 other people who kind of look similar, sound similar, but like are maybe like a little bit thinner, prettier, fill in the blank, and then being judged. I mean, if you haven't watched A Chorus Line, watch it. That's such a
Right.
beautiful, portrayal of that experience. But, it just makes me think about if more people felt like they could talk about this stuff, especially in like a therapeutic environment with someone who's like a trained professional, and they could feel better. Like it's not, you don't have to live with this your whole life, and it can limit people so much. And
Yeah.
and I'm just wondering, if you are finding that like social media and kind of this like boom of mental health professionals on social media who are like putting a lot of psychological concepts into like bite size, narcissism and coercion. And these are coming up because I think a lot of people are talking about these things right now. But do you feel like this is making psychology and therapy more accessible? Do you think it's making it reductive? Like what's your take on the accessibility of psychology and mental health these days?
You know, I think when it's used well, social media is one of the best tools that we have. I
Mhm.
think the ability to connect with so many people in so many different places over commonalities and then also ways to learn new things about people and things and events, it's amazing to watch happen. And so I think when psychology and sort of the therapeutic process is shared, um, I think it is allowing, I hope, I should say, I'm hoping that the goal is that people are able to remove the stigma of mental health and of mental health awareness. Like I said, when I was struggling as a kid, it was like before people really talked about therapy. Like I think I was at Marymount the first time I actually like knew anyone that had a therapist.
Mm.
And it was right after I graduated. Marymount was the first time that I went to a therapist. And I remember feeling like Oh, I can't tell anyone where I'm going. I
Mm,
can't, it's, it's a secret. Like, I can't let people know I'm damaged when it's not any of that. And I think that the ability to sort of celebrate that via social media has been really great because if you are someone who is afraid to take that step, and you can watch some of these videos just to gain some insight in what the process is like and what you're talking about and what there is to learn, it just takes away the stigma.
mhm,
I think the place where it can be tricky is I don't think social media can ever replace having a therapist, having a psychiatrist, only because there is not a relationship built. So you're watching videos and you can learn things, but part of the journey is being able to say, I feel. And you can't really give that to a social media, but what you can do is you can learn from that and you can learn the things that you want to work on yourself, some things you may not even know other people are struggling with, to
Mhm.
know that like narcissism is a thing
mhm,
and that it is something that is treated in sessions, and discussed openly and not something to feel like it's taboo that you can't speak about. I think if you learn that on social media, that's terrific. Then find the person that's right for you to have that conversation with
mhm,
and start that process. That to me is the whole end game of therapy. There was maybe a year or so ago, they were starting to talk about like AI therapy, like that
Mhm.
becoming like the next thing. And in my mind, that's not great because to me, that is definitely not a relationship. Every time you go on a chat GPT, it's just answering a question of yours. So you're not building. The most important part is the early stages of therapy is the joining, is creating that bond between therapist and client. And so,
Mhm.
that's the stuff that's missed on like social media or any other
Mhm.
sort of AI version of things. That's when you want to make that human connection. And that's where I think things like, all of us being artists, um, we understand that. We understand the importance of human connection. And so that to me is if you watch a video and that makes you want to go out and connect with someone, job all done.
nice. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you about this. You shared something on your social media page a little while back, through your therapy practice page, about this rise in talk therapy, while there's like a sort of a corollary dip in people utilizing psych meds sort of without the therapy aspect, which seems,
Mhm.
quite promising. But could you talk maybe a bit about the significance of that trend?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am a huge fan of talk therapy and medication.
Mhm.
I think both of them are really can be very viable ways to find healing and find growth as a person. To me, as someone who like anytime I had like a sickness, I wanted a pill as a child, like give me whatever, let me feel better in 2 to 3 days. It's one of the first things I say to every new client that I start with is this process is not that. You're not going to be cured of strep throat after our first session. You know what I mean? This is a journey that we are on together, and it takes time. And that to me is where the importance of the talk therapy comes in tandem or with medication or by itself. Is again, it's that joining process. It's that working through your thoughts, working through what you feel and why you feel it and how you feel it. That to me is the best way to heal because we all have that little child that at some point was pushed down on the playground or was slapped for something or whatever it is that was the first sort of moment where we felt um, the rigidity of life
Mhm.
hit us.
Mhm.
And that can grow in people, and it very often does. Those are the moments that you can't fix with just medication.
Right.
That's like learning about yourself. And I will say, and I will be completely honest, that I do a combination for myself. I use talk therapy and I use medication. The medication helps me to communicate better.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
for me, that's how those work in tandem. I take the medication so that I am in a better state of mind to be able to be open about who I am and what my journey is. And that helps me in my talk therapy process as a client. So that's why I think the talking is so helpful. And then medication can go in either direction. I have clients that I've absolutely said, I would love to refer you to someone if you're interested in that. And I've had clients who have asked, and I've said, I don't see that you're in that place right now. I'm happy to advise you to speak to someone, but like I don't see that as a need. But if it's something that you want, let's explore that. And I
Mm.
think that, but nothing is more powerful than being able to share your voice, and that to me is uh, why sort of the work that I do as a therapist feels so important.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Larry, do you have a particular like group of people, or I know you mentioned that you see a lot of entertainers. Do you have a particular area of psychology therapy that you focus on, or are you kind of open to anything and everything?
Well, it's sort of funny to be 48. Here I am saying my age out there for all the world to know, but to be 48 and to be new at something, which
Mhm.
is, to go back to imposter syndrome, like when I was in school, like everyone was like 25 and I was like the old man in all my classes. Um, but with that, I feel like the work that I do, um, I feel like I have a little more wisdom about me and I sort of know the things that I am good at and maybe what I'm
Mhm.
not good at. So I am trying to reach out of my comfort zone and to feel more comfortable um, with, with even different models of therapy. And, you sort of are like always learning what works and what doesn't work. But what I feel really comfortable with, what I work a lot with is the arts community, the LGBTQIA plus community. I work a lot with people coping with anxiety and stress, grief. I work a lot with people that are struggling with grief. Um, a lot of other communities that are struggling to have their voices be heard. Those are a lot of the areas that I have been doing most of my work with. I have worked with kids. I do, and that is an amazing sort of experience because to see the therapeutic process through a child's eyes is so vastly different than seeing it through an adult's eyes. And you just sort of, sometimes you sit and watch TikToks together, like, and that is part of the process. It's I am always open to new experiences. I think being who I am, being someone that's in the arts and queer, uh, people sort of gravitate to me, like when they read my profile on our equity therapy website or on Psychology Today or on LinkedIn or whatever, on any of those, I tend to uh, find people or people find me that have sort of similar interests, I feel.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
Because ultimately it just has to be about comfortability.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to feel comfortable with me. And if you don't feel like you can be honest with me, then I'm not the right therapist for you. And I always say, if you do like a consultation before you start, I always say, you are not allowed to tell me at the end of this consult that you want to start because I want you to leave. I want you to go and think about it, talk to your best friend, mom, your dog, whoever you need to talk to make sure that this is not like a used car sales pitch that I'm
Mm.
giving you. This is like
Yeah.
you are investing in yourself. And if I'm not the right person to do that with you, I will help you find that person because
Yeah.
you can't be your authentic self if you feel like you're not connecting with someone.
Right.
Right.
I have to admit,
Finding a therapist, sorry, Greg,
No,
but I'm
no,
going to jump all over.
go for
I was just going to say, like, finding a good therapist is akin to finding like a life partner or a best friend. Like, you do
hmm
not want to get married on the first date. And if you, and I say this from experience, if you have a therapist that's not the right match for you, it can be detrimental. And if you're someone like me who like has a hard time putting down boundaries or like ending things because I'm afraid of hurting someone's
hmm
feelings,
hmm
you can be making those co-pays a lot longer than you really should. So
That's right. That's right. It's hard to stand up for yourself. It's hard to say like, this is not right for me.
yeah,
I try to do a check in after like the third session just to sort of be like, how you feeling? Just
yeah,
how is this working for you? Do you feel like, and also sometimes it's like, I need to be pushed less. I need to be pushed more. I need, and that, it's like a note session for a show, you just,
Right.
what more do I need? What less do I need? Um, it's a little bit of a dance, and you want to get it right, and you want to feel like that the conversation is flowing in a way that is always productive for the client.
Mm.
I was just going to add earlier, I have to imagine also, you mentioned that you're working with several kind of marginalized communities in your work as well. I have to imagine that at the time we're in now, where a lot of those communities are being sort of made to be extra vulnerable, that idea of community and solidarity really becomes maybe more at the forefront even of the way you kind of, initiate your practice or practice your practice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's nothing is in. So one of the reasons that I went the marriage and family therapy
Mhm.
route is what that degree teaches you is that we don't live in a bubble.
Yeah.
Like your challenges that you're struggling with on a day-to-day basis are not just about you. And so marriage and family therapy looks at therapy from the what is your world? What is your environment? So it's, you know, I have anxiety. Okay, who's in the house with you? Who do you live with?
Right.
What is your work situation like? What was fifth grade like for you? All of these things, all of these people make you who you are. And so if you try to look at therapy from just the perspective of like the individual, it's very limiting. You're taking out so much of what we do in the world on a day-to-day basis. So for me, it's so important that you're looking at the whole self, and that the practice of that is not necessarily just talking about the day to day, like, oh, I had a bad day on Tuesday. Oh, Wednesday was a good day, which all of that is important. But it's also like, why was Tuesday a good day? What did you do that inspired you on that day? Wednesday, why was that bad? What are the troubling things that happened that day? Oh, it's related to work. Let's talk about work. And so you sort of are delving into more than just the individual. And to me, that was the only way I could see therapy. So that was very
Mm.
important to me to have that kind of work.
Yeah.
Mm. As you're kind of talking about like your philosophy and your style of really wanting to look at, like the origins of people, it's
Mm-hmm.
reminding me a lot of like a lot of the coursework we did at Marymount and Udahagen and going
Yes.
into the character Bibles, and I think about, I throw a lot of shade to my undergraduate um education, but mostly because I just didn't, I don't think I was in a good state of mind to really appreciate everything I was learning at the time. But I find that every single day in the work I do now, I use what I learned then. And I use it in my work on myself, and I use it when I work with clients, and I use it when I'm writing, especially character development and story
Mm-hmm.
development. And I'm just wondering, Larry, for you, are there things that were foundational in theater that now contribute directly to how you understand psychology and your clients and the world around you?
Mm.
Yeah, there's a moment that I can never not think about from Marymount. Um, and I don't remember if either of you were in this class with me, but it was our very last semester. Mary Fleischer taught the class, and it was mostly seniors. And uh, a good friend of ours, Dot, was sitting next to me in class, and we were in the middle of, like, I don't know if it was play analysis or whatever this was, but we were dissecting a play, and I know exactly when this was because it was right after I had just directed Hair, so it was like the last week of classes, and the professor has this book out, and Dot raises her hand and goes, I just don't know. Like, we're reading this play. We graduate in a week. I have no idea what happens next. What is this world? We're theater artists, like, and just unraveled in this moment. And the professor took the book, shut it, put it on the desk,
Mm.
and opened up the dialogue of what does it mean to graduate from college? Where do you go next? What are the
Mm.
avenues? What are the resources? How do we help you? How do you help yourself? All of these things. And I thought, Yeah, 4 years of tuition were worth that one class because she could have easily dismissed that and we could have kept working on a Strindberg or whatever it was that we
Mhm.
were reading. But that was like life lessons. That was
Mhm.
taking your art and understanding it and moving it to the next level and feeling like you had the permission to do that because someone was saying to you, let's do this, let's go down this road. And so that to me was the moment that I always remember from Marymount
Mm.
in terms of like learning, which is ironic because it wasn't like a directing class. It wasn't a stage management class. It was this life lesson of sometimes there are things bigger than what is right in front of you. Like there was something
Mhm.
bigger than that book that day, and being able to name it and talk about it. I think that was probably the beginning of me wanting to be a therapist without me ever knowing that, like
Mm.
that moment defined so much for me. Um, and it was so powerful. I can like see the classroom. I could see everything about that moment. And it was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I
Yeah.
wasn't in that class, that particular one. I'm jealous.
Yeah.
You were probably in that class and you just played hooky that day.
I think, well, I'm like, the history of opera was last semester, senior year. Do you remember that class,
Wow.
Greg? Were you in
I
that?
never took
It
history
was,
of opera.
oh,
I
okay. It was
sidestepped that one. I heard it was, yeah,
it was the best class
I heard
ever.
that.
But it was Friday at like 8 a.m.
Yeah. Right.
So everyone was still drunk half the
Yep.
time. And that was another one of those classes where we would listen to opera, which was not something I identified as like liking at the time, but the you can learn a lot about life through opera. you know
Mm-hmm.
and I think the gravity of like what artists and playwrights and composers are tapping into when they create these things is really about the larger things in life. So whether it be directly Mary Fleischer breaking it down in such a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful way, or like by osmosis, hungover listening to an aria from Madame Butterfly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of all
You know,
about like the experience of living.
Yeah.
yeah. And we did the directing
Mhm.
projects at school
Yeah.
where
Yes.
the young directing students would do like a 20-minute cut of a play. And my first one, which I will say this to the world now, that I tried to cast Greg in and I was told I wasn't allowed to have him because he had bad behavior. Um,
That's right.
Right.
Sorry, Greg, I just had to put that out
That's
there.
cool.
That's right.
But I saw that play. It was this beautiful piece that I wanted to do called The Conduct of Life, and it was just
Mhm.
really fraught with drama. It was a military man who kept a 12-year-old girl in his basement that he would rape and then read poetry to, and it was just this wild piece. And I was looking at it so literally because I didn't know that you could not look at things literally.
Mm.
And uh, Richard Niles was the professor of that class, and he just kept pushing me, like he just in this way to be like, it's not literal, it's abstract. What is abstract? What does that feel like? And so I just like went off the rails, and I just did like I took the themes, but then I just exploded the sort of idea of letting it be abstract. And I remember the first night, the lights going down, and there was this like nothing happened, and I was like, oh, everyone hates this. This is terrible. And then everyone started applauding, and I was like, oh,
Oh.
okay. And that was like another one of those moments where I was like, life is abstract. Life is not
Mm.
literal.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that was a powerful, it's so easy to, and with therapy I use that all the time because it's so easy to just like I said, just look at what happened on Tuesday, and you're not looking deeper and bigger and more in a more rich sort of way, looking into people's lives. And I think that that's what theater also does. When you do it right, when you see that play or that musical that just gets it right, there's nothing like it. And that's how therapy feels to me, is like just going deeper and not feeling like you're rigidly stuck in a box, but that you just have to knock those walls down.
Mm.
That
Mm.
So maybe Mary Mount was always leading me to become a therapist. I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Right.
Or pushing you to need therapy, which was my
Or
case.
pushing me to, well, that's certainly is the case.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Yeah,
Well, I'm curious. I mean, we've spoken about, your creative input into shows, and to some extent, the sort of the creativity that you bring to your therapy approach. But I'd love to, with kind of the last few minutes, as we're closing out with you here, talk a little bit about your kind of individual creative endeavors. So you had mentioned, that you have a couple things that you've been working on recently and over the last, several years. So I'd love to, if you would, share a bit of that with us and our listeners. We'd love that.
Sure. Well, what's interesting is my therapist told me that I need to find more creative outlets because I was getting stuck in the rigid box of like school, show, that like this day-to-day hamster wheel. And a couple of years ago, a friend of mine who was a music director on a tour that I did, he was like, I want to play you some music from this thing that I wrote. And he was playing this music, and it was so just I loved everything. But he was telling me sort of the story that went along with it, and he was play a song, and I was like, really? That's what? Okay, keep going. And then he was telling me like a little more of the story, and I was like, okay. And then finally, he was like, do you not like the story? And I said, I just don't think the story and the music match. And he said, well, we just wrote like a dummy story because we had the music. Do you want to write the book for this? And I was like, uh, yes, and it was like the most hesitant yes I've probably ever given in my entire life. But we spent like 2 years writing this musical. It's called Another Way, and John, the composer, is British, and so he's over in England trying to get people interested in this piece. But what's funny is it deals with mental health, and it deals with people in the arts, and so it just sort of spoke to me. I think the music resonated with me in a way that I didn't realize things were resonating with me. And so the journey was really cathartic writing that book. And now that it's been finished as something can be at this point, until you start to work on it, I feel really proud of that work, and I'm really excited. I hope, the goal is to get a workshop within the next year of that, and I would love the vulnerability of the imposter syndrome of people. I remember the first time we read it out loud, we asked some friends from a tour that we were doing to read it, and I mean, like, the sweat pouring off of me was like unreal, because I was like, this is the most vulnerable I think I've been in so long. And then when people like laughed at a joke, I was like, I wrote that, I did that, so that's a journey that I'm on. I have a very complicated, far too long for right now, history in my family of sort of um, of family dynamics and sort of personal struggles and things like that. And I think it would be a great book. I also think it would be a great series for Netflix. But hey, Netflix. So I have been working. I'm scared to death of that because it is very personal to my family, and so I will, sort of dip my toes into that a little bit, and then I'll run away. And I need to, but that is like sort of the passion project that I've been working on writing, is this sort of story of my past.
Okay.
You have to write it. It sounds like you need a writers group, and we
I
know
think so.
people. Yeah.
Maybe I was gonna
Yeah.
say, do you know anybody?
Sure did.
Of course. We'll hook
I
you
mean,
up, Larry.
listen, do you know what it was like to be in a Barnes and Noble and see the two of you talking about your book? I mean, that is when you see your friends come into themselves and have these amazing successes. It's sort of the most surreal experience, and brings so much joy to me to see people find themselves and find their paths, and do things that people love. And like the fact that like people read your books, and like that is so wild to me, because I just think it is like, what more could you give this world than your part of your heart? And I think that like the fact that you guys have done that has been so inspiring to me as an artist, and as a, I'll say, writer with quotation marks, and like just a human. Like, just to see the work that you guys have done is so beautiful and inspiring. You think like, I went to school with you, like I was your RA, and we, to bring that sort of full circle, and to see where everyone has gone, and to, that is such a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Oh, Thank you. Well, likewise, and we are so proud of you, all Mr. Masters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
That should be my new name.
and everyone should be following you. You have a wonderful TikTok. I look at it every day. It makes me laugh. It makes me think. And you are going to write this book, the other
That's
book.
right. That's
Um,
right.
and we'll have you back on
Yeah.
because we just adore you.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you're healing. You're out there healing people because you're
Thank you.
definitely a healer.
Yeah.
And it also occurs to you never really lost the clipboard because as a stage manager,
No. No,
oh
are you
yeah,
kidding?
you
My
just
favorite
like
thing is to write people up. Come on, don't you be late for half
Oh,
hour. If you're late for half hour, that's it. I am right there typing that note. Dear so-and-so, you were late.
right.
Yeah, some habits never die.
Yeah.
well, we all also need our semblance of control. So I'm
Mhm.
glad that yours is keeping things in order. And I also just want to say real quick, like I feel like no one listens to ABBA and feels worse. Like it just is
No.
Good point.
very feel good. So that just totally tracks for me that that's what the show you're on right now.
Yeah, yesterday was my 742nd show.
Wow.
Of Mamma Mia.
742 shows of Mamma Mia. Mhm.
Oh my God. Does it
Unreal.
haunt your dreams? The song?
Yeah, it actually doesn't. But like I do find myself humming it during the day. You just can't, like,
Yeah.
it's infectious. The music
Yeah.
is it's just great. And all the pedicabs now in New York City are all blasting Mamma Mia. But like,
Right.
so I'll leave work and that's all I hear, and I don't get irritated by it. I'm like, oh, dancing queen, okay.
Yeah.
It just is. It's just part of the journey.
Yeah. I love it. Oh my God, Larry, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. This was
Thank you.
amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Tell everyone where they can find you on social media, out in the world, all the things.
Yeah. So equitytherapy.com is the where our therapy group is, and you can look at me and all the amazing people I work at on there. And then I am on TikTok and Instagram at Therapy with Larry. So that's where you can find me.
All right.
Oh,
Well, go out, listeners, find him. He's a beautiful specimen of a man. He is a dear friend, and I can't believe that an hour just flew by, but here we are. It was a beautiful catch up, man. No, but yes. And yeah, again, just to echo Liz, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your wisdom and your generosity and your kind of spirit. It's been really wonderful.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Honor to have you. Hate to let you go, but it is that time. I will take us out.
thanks, Greg.
Of course. Imposter Hour with Liz and Greg is created and hosted by us, Elizabeth Keenan and Greg Wands. The show is produced and edited by Bookwild Collective founder Kate Herget. Scott Leeds composed our original theme music, and Steve Luoma designed our logo. Thank you for listening.